for that county architect to come in for a very long time.
Well, I know. We'll just keep saying no until he shows up. 20 Boulevard. Come on down.
So you've met me, but you haven't met anybody else.
Cal Skolinski. Nice to meet you. Cal Skolinski.
Carolyn Bouchon.
Hi, Sean.
Hello.
Hi, John.
Nice to meet you.
Tom. Todd.
Hello.
Hi, Tom. I'm Sean. Nice to meet you. Hi, nice to meet you.
So we met briefly, David and Mariana and I met in a rough workshop session to talk about how to make an application, what to bring in, and broad concept drawings were shown.
And you provided us with this,
I
right?
think everybody's got one.
Does everybody have that?
Mhm. So that session was really in preparation for putting together a packet to come in for workshop and then application. And Mr. Potashik is that pronounced correctly? Potashik is the contractor.
Okay. So why don't you take us through what you want us to decide on, or,
Get started on
yeah.
it. Want to do that, or should?
Would you like? Sure.
So-
You want first?
Sure. I'll show this. So basically, we are trying to restore 20 the Boulevard to its original state. And we were able to find this picture, which is in your packet in a larger, I found it right here, in the archives of the New York Public Library.
I'm very impressed that you found that.
She isn't?
I found it too, years ago.
And it's a page about,
Oh,
one, two.
it's
Yeah.
further up forward. Okay, got it.
And what it shows is quite interesting, that functionally that house is a French colonial. And in doing further research, we realized that the house belonged to Gouverneur Kemble and not William Kemble, as Scenic Hudson had sort of, there's quite a lot of evidence for that. There's this drawing. There's multiple references by Washington Irving, the famous local author. And this was actually a bachelor pad, and they came here to party. And they would carouse and take boats up to the Catskills. And the thing that fits with that is that if you go upstairs, the chimneys are kind of in a corner until you realize that in fact there were only 2 bedrooms upstairs. So the original house here, these middle windows are in the hall, and there's 2 bedrooms, and then
On
that
each side.
on each side. So downstairs, you walk in, on the right there's a living room, on the left there's a dining room. There's a downstairs kitchen, which was accessible from the back, where the servants did whatever servants do. And upstairs are 2 bedrooms. And Washington Irving has quite colorful descriptions of the parties they had here and what fun they had, and called it a Bachelor Elysium. So this original French colonial house, the French colonial ties into the fact that Gouverneur lived in Europe and traveled extensively. It's where he found out how to build his cannonballs. And so our goal is to restore the house as close to that. And following Kathleen, sorry,
That's okay.
mispronounced your name, advice, this is really a reproduction of the original house to as close as we can get. And Tom will explain all the technical details of how to get the historic. And then the addition here would be separate.
So we restore the original part that was, right now there's a portion that was built later. So the idea would be to tear that portion down, add on that side. This is facing the train station. And then, but restore what was the 1800s?
1820, 1833 picture, 1826. I think it was built.
Section, as closely as we can discern from the record.
So the loose discussion we had in that initial conversation was, we know that the house has evolved over time, and so maintaining a record of that evolution and not presenting new construction as if the house had always been as long as it is. In broad concept, that was the discussion.
Okay, I think that, have you spoken with Scenic Hudson, because they've got.
Yes, in order to purchase the house, we had sort of submitted drawings to them, and part of the contract was that this 1950s edition was very poorly built.
It's
and
1950.
1920s maybe.
Right.
I mean, it has, but it was poorly built, and the roof lines don't match at all. If you look at a photograph here of the house from the west, you can see that this addition is poorly built. So that they had agreed right from the beginning that this could be torn down and rebuilt. And then the idea of the L-shaped addition comes really from this drawing here on page 3 of your packet. And there was a sort of L-shaped addition off the back, and part of the contractual agreement with Scenic Hudson, do you have the other drawing? Was that it was okay to construct a garage. And so we had submitted drawings quite similar to this to Scenic Hudson for an L-shaped addition going off the back.
That's the side of.
That's the east
Constitution,
side.
Can't even see it, but.
Not for a public right of way.
This can't be seen from a public right of way.
That's the backside, it can't be seen from the river, so they're in agreement to allow this much of an addition, that many square feet. And it actually more, they had agreed, but they're not trying to get everything, they're happy to have something this big to add on to the.
Now,
The original.
there might be an agreement between you and Scenic Hudson, but they don't really have any authority.
No, we're
to
answering
determine.
Nell's question of if they're on
They're
board,
aware.
right? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I was asking, right, because any demolition in district has proven to be a very tricky situation, so I guess, it becomes a question of making sure that we all understand the extent of what you're proposing.
And we did talk about the fact that this structure is included in the national listing, the Foundry,
Right.
and therefore, type 1 status would apply, even though it is a residential structure, from an environmental review.
I went to the viewpoint at Scenic Hudson, our building.
Oh, yes.
And from that side, you can, I didn't actually print it because we did it after I did this, but you can see the front of the house and, this.
We talked about the fact that remember we approved last year the walkway up to the viewing platform, Scenic Hudson, and the question was, what of the house can you see from that portion? Could you see anything up the back? So you found that you could see that.
You can see the southern end of the house and that's it.
In
And
the west.
western side. I'm looking for the picture, which
So the
Yes,
part of that
fine.
new L with, that sticks.
oh, it's on your, maybe it's on your phone, David? I'm sure it's on your phone, actually.
The viewing platforms from here, you can see this and the back side of it.
You can basically see this end of the house, which is the southern end of the house, and the western end. Give your phone up.
I thought I saw a picture of it in here.
Um, You basically can see this view.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you can see from the viewing platform, similar to this 1920s drawing. When you stand there, and I stood there and held my camera as high as I could to see what you would see once the platform is built up, and you would get a view very similar to this from the scenic Hudson viewing platform, would then make part of the house accessible to the public.
You can see this.
Yeah. And,
Yes.
and the wing of that, with the garage would stick
Mhm.
past here.
Oh,
Okay.
you found the side windows for the.
Yes. Do you want me to sort
Six,
of
page 6.
go through the sort of details of the house and the roof?
Well,
or-
well, the thing is that, I guess, this is gonna be a little bit of a longer process, and I think that ultimately what we have to see and approve are actual construction documents. So, I think that,
Well, they're looking for concept approval.
right.
Not
Yeah.
approval, but discussion
Yeah,
of
and
concept.
we'll get it drawn
Right.
pretty
Right.
quickly.
Well,
There's the photograph from the viewing platform,
from the viewing platform,
so you
okay.
can see what you can see. It's pretty, very, very similar to the drawing.
All right, I think that, what we probably need, because this is just a workshop, and so we haven't had a referral, so we really
Yes,
have.
we have a referral.
We have a
Yeah,
referral?
it is submitted electronically. Jeff submitted it electronically, but did not print it out. He submitted it on the 27th of July, but he just needs to print it and put it in the file. Oh, this is 26th, right? Somewhere in your folder. It's-
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's over
Okay.
here, sorry.
And is this the approximate floor plan that you're
Yes.
proposing?
He made the referral on the 26th of
This is
September.
the original in this area, and this is where the part that would be taken down is, right about
Mhm.
here, and then the new goes a little further, and then it extends out back.
Okay.
Are these window hoods there?
Yeah, they look like,
They just went to put this asbestos right over top of them?
well, they tore them off.
But
The crown
they're on
part.
this, that's what I need.
Yeah. But the-
Which one
there's-
was you referring to? What page?
So if you look at page 19, it's a blow up of the illustration that's on page, is it?
It is.
Yeah, of the drawing that's on page 2. And the little side windows have these sweet little crowns. And there's sort of an entablature around the central window.
Page
Do
19.
I have it page 19? Oh, it's all the way in the back, Where do you see window
Kinda like,
hoods?
it's just in concept, but kind of like,
Where do you see
in a
window
sense,
hoods
like,
on page 19?
that's what I envisioned.
That's what
That they had
Catherine was
something
talking about.
going on.
Well, there's actually a cat. You see this?
Okay, I didn't.
Let me get it closer so you can see it.
Oh, yeah, there's a little
And-
establishment
uh-huh.
in there. But these are maybe, I know that, the original doors have a lot of this going on.
That sort of, that curved molding.
Which is, so they kind of a bead, and the door openings and the window openings have
Have
that
that on the
framed.
inside.
And then above that is the hood that you were talking about, which So the fascia of that
Yep.
hood could be like a flat board, and then it builds up with the crown.
Yeah.
And the siding seems to be, that we can discern, seems to be like a center cut tongue roof, kind of just, so like Boscobel has, just
Yeah.
a flat board on it.
Isn't she black?
It's not, I don't know, it's tongue and groove actually. That's what we found.
So I'm imagining that primary. I just saw a picture of Bosco working.
Okay, so we have a referral, we have an application. So, I guess what we could do is start the secret process, and I think, does everybody sort of understand what is being proposed?
No.
Well, Marianne hasn't finished walking us through.
Huh?
You haven't finished walking us through what you were.
Not right now.
Okay, sorry.
No. So the proposal, probably maybe going to the plans would give you a better overall view, is to restore this part, tear down the current existing 1920s or 50s.
What was an addition to the
What was an
original.
addition that you can
was-
see in this picture where the roof line doesn't match.
Where it drops off.
It drops off, and
Mhm.
if you go inside, it's really very poorly built, and there's no historical details in it. And to create an L-shaped addition off the back in order to have a garage, which is what we had submitted to Scenic Hudson. And I understand they don't have any jurisdiction now, but they did at the time we purchased it.
On that plan, kind of where the original footprint is.
That'd be great.
No, I
You
know
got it?
I know the
Okay,
building.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a garage on the first floor
Yeah,
and
so we're proposing to extend, but this is the original with what's about here is what's existing.
Mhm.
We're proposing to tear this part down, go a little further, and then go beyond the building.
Something like this.
Is there any existing understanding of how big the back wing was originally?
We haven't seen any,
The
catch glimpses on.
The
that's it.
only document that I could find on the back wing is this small drawing.
This is true.
I searched through archives in the New York Public Library, all sorts of documents, and was quite delighted to find a
Mhm.
really good drawing that gives us an idea of how to restore the original. But
And there's nothing in the ground?
There's like a moat, you know, a deep entrance that goes to the basement. And beyond that, it's hard to see if there's any footings or anything. It might have been on pillars or,
Yeah, it just could have been very disturbed.
yeah. So-
And they did some archaeological work on the site, but it was mostly towards the end where they're building the viewing platform.
The addition would be almost invisible to the public, and certainly not visible from the river.
Well, the new part that you planned, this part of the facade certainly would be.
The facade would be with the L part of the addition.
That wouldn't be visible from the Scenic Hudson viewing stand? that's
Yeah.
going in?
No, actually,
It will be.
this
Yeah.
side of the building might be from Metro North, and Metro North is a publicly accessible right-of-way.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that there may be vegetation in the way right now kind of doesn't count. Because vegetation can die or be cut down.
I think that just if we're gonna start talking about it, my reaction to the drawings is that my only concern is just the height of the back wing, the
The dormers.
addition, just the height of it overall, because just judging from this photo, it looks like it was smaller than the primary mass, judging from this illustration. And looks like it looks like more of an addition in this illustration than it does in the proposed plan. And I don't know how that would be mitigated in terms of materials that you're using or anything like that, but in this drawing that you have here, it looks like they are sort of equally prominent volumes.
Yes.
And it kind of removes the sort of story of a building that kind of grows as it needs to grow, which we have examples of elsewhere in the village, and it's kind of a pretty common thing. But other than that, as far as the primary facade is concerned, I don't think it's doing a disservice to the historic portion of the building to expand it linearly. As long as there's some kind of a differentiation between what's original and what's new. My only other question.
The porch there.
Porch would be sort of, was.
Right, yeah.
That's
kind of
the
showing
footprint
this
of that is there,
difference.
that porch is there.
Mhm.
But also it looks like on this drawing too, on page 3, that the porch originally wrapped around the east side.
But an earlier one doesn't show that.
The earlier drawing doesn't show that. If you, I addressed that point on page 7, because we were curious as to whether the original 1826 house had a wraparound porch.
Mhm.
And you can see photo number 6, it says showing shutters on the basement window. That basement window is what they called a summer kitchen, which was functionally the kitchen that the servants used,
Mhm.
that had a back access at the back of the house. And those are sort of, I mean, the windows are, you know, they're not, they had shutters, and if there were a wraparound porch on that side, it would have obscured all the light to the kitchen where people did all of the cooking for the original house.
Mhm.
So, that's why you can see the fixtures from the original shutters and those windows. And the porch above that would have condemned that kitchen. So we thought that we'd like to restore that original kitchen. It has a beautiful old bread oven, and it still has the arm from the original kitchen and everything you would have had in an 1820s kitchen.
Hmm.
And
In the basement.
in the basement.
Right.
And if you put a porch on that side, I mean, you know, the porch is over the windows, so no natural light comes in, and the windows on are really, would have been functional
Well,
windows.
is it possible that that's a much earlier kitchen, which when no longer in use, when a kitchen was incorporated in the L, the porch was
Yes.
extended in the 20s?
Yes,
Yeah, that's what
absolutely.
we
I think that's
think.
exactly
There
what I
is a-
think, that
there's
in
a stoop.
1826, sorry, love.
There's a stoop on the southern end where the porch was footed,
Mhm.
and that fits in with the 1920s drawing.
So we
But
think that in
And
the,
that has since been taken down. It was neither original, and it's not there now.
so the 1826 original house did not have this wraparound porch on the southern end. And then when they built these additions in the 1920s,
And the kitchen.
the basement kitchen was no longer functional. They built this southern porch over the windows of their old kitchen, and it was no longer used, and then they put a kitchen on the ground floor.
Although it's somewhat hard to tell from this.
It is somewhat hard to tell from
Because of
that,
the-
which is why these shutters, maybe you can't see exactly from the window, but these are, you can see from these look to be original shutters on this basement window where this basement kitchen would have been. And it would have been completely dysfunctional with a porch over it. So I think, as you correctly state, it was added in the 1920s or whenever, that addition was made. So we'd like to restore that kitchen, utilize those windows so that you can get light into the basement. And so that's why, and we thought that would look more historic.
Okay, does everybody understand the scope of the project so that we can go through the secret process.
I feel that I understand the scope. Yes.
Yeah. I think
Sean, may I ask a question? Was it specifically sort of the height of this with the dormers? Because the plan was to have the roof line be the same. Because you had said something you were worried about the scope of the addition.
Escape.
I think that it is having the roof line, the ridge remain the same. So it's the height of the volume overall.
Rather than having it deferred to the
Rather than
original
having it
mass.
step down, it looks like from this drawing, which of course is, I mean, it's a sketch that somebody did the building, so we don't know how accurate it is, but it appears from this drawing that the back volume is lower than the main volume. So it looks more like it's an addition, that, as opposed to all being built in one plot. But I don't know how anyone else feels about that.
Is this what you were proposing? Okay, because I guess the concerns that I would have are basically this. One, you have a very historic original portion, and you get situations like this where, you know, it blends into the new part. I mean, certainly one of the things that we've always found to be useful is that if this was stepped back a little bit, then at least, you know, the original building is differentiated and stands out by itself.
So
You
maybe
know, we had
step
this
back
discussion
and step
regarding
this down.
56 Baldwin.
Yeah.
Right.
Step it back and maybe step the roof line down a little as
Yeah.
well.
Okay.
So that it, you know, it's
That's a completely
because
separate unit.
So it's
if you take-
identifiable.
if you take a look at this, at least in plan, I mean, I didn't do any measurements, but it certainly looks like the addition is actually larger than the main building in square footage.
And we do concern ourselves with massing and scale.
All right, let us go through, do I have a motion concerning the seeker status?
We're not in a voting session.
Yes, we are
Yes, we are.
tonight. This is advertised as a work session.
I thought we were in workshop.
This portion of the meeting is workshop,
Okay,
so we can do that next time.
all right.
I mean, we know that that's coming at any rate.
No, we know that because of its status in the national district and because there's a partial demolition, we know that we are going to be in a type 1 situation under secret.
Well, I'm not totally sure about that, and the reason I say that.
You should be, because I had a conversation with Gratinger at SHPO.
Okay. Because my question is that we deal with a lot of buildings that are in the national district that are demolishing certain portions when they're doing additions and so on.
This is an individual listing as part of the foundry.
And for
That
the
may-
sa-
that
and
may
for the
make a
same-
difference.
And for the same reason that 35 Market Street was type 1, even though it's in the local district, because it is so proximate
I know.
to the national district.
I know, but that was a total demolition, I mean, building.
Well, I'm not so certain that this edition here is a 1920s edition.
Okay. Well,
And there's certain other sources that we can consult on that.
I guess that's one of the things which, you know, there's going to be a certain amount of research that we're going to ask you to do, and certainly dating the addition as much as possible so that we know exactly what we're
The
dealing
addition
with.
has asbestos, we've taken it out. Had asbestos piping in it.
I'm sorry.
I'm certain that
Asbestos
wasn't,
piping.
I'm
Piping.
certain that wasn't original to the building.
That's what I mean, I think that would correspond with the building not being original, because they didn't have asbestos back in the 1920s.
I think a site visit would be helpful.
Yeah.
I have with me the New York State Office of Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation certificate, and it certifies that the West Point Foundry archaeological site is in the State Registry of Historic Places and the National Registry of Historic Places. And it does not specify that the Kemble House And I'm actually in the process of applying to find out.
Okay.
And I was just drafting it, so if you,
I understand that, and the reason that we just made that assumption is because the Kemble property was in fact part of the West Point Foundry. So when West Point Foundry was made a national, or an individual listing on the National Register, we assumed it was the whole thing. But I think that
Well,
that
I
is.
didn't assume that. I looked it up, and I
Yeah.
looked up the map of the site that was submitted to the register, and the site is in.
And it was confirmed, I had a telephone conversation with Bill Cratchit from the National Register
Okay.
unit.
All right, well, then they should respond to,
Yeah, they will.
okay, to Mary. Okay, so let me sort of explain the process. What we'll do is first do a secret vote, which is secret, which is the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And if it's a type 1 action, then it'll require an environmental assessment form. If it's a type 2, then we'll just proceed with our evaluation. In either case, I think that what we're going to be looking for is documentation of the things that are found, so that whether it's a 1920s edition, at least we have some documentation of what was there, and also it'll enable us to better make decisions. One of the issues is that we really should determine is whether or not this building is in fact, and it sounds like Kathleen has already asked the question, and it is in fact on the National Register.
I have the maps on that, I think, that this is the William Campbell estate was included on the original. It was applied, it was done before the subdivision is what I'm trying to say. So that
That makes sense.
the William Campbell estate
Mm-hmm.
is on the map.
Right.
So the whole thing was applied for in 2010. That was before the subdivision was done. So
Okay.
it's all included, so that would make this a type
Type
1.
one.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah. And this is the National Register of Historic Places, West Point Foundry and Agricultural Sites, and it includes the William Campbell estate.
Okay.
So it's all as one.
Right. If that's the case, then I think the first thing you would have to do, assuming that we take a vote and it becomes a type 1, is that there is an environmental assessment form that needs to be filled out.
The long form,
Right.
which you can access via our website.
Okay.
And what we'll do is we'll start the process. Next voting session is
October 11th.
October 11th.
I don't know if others feel this way. I would find it very helpful to do a site visit and
Oh, that would be
walk
great.
around and
I
look,
would
if you're willing
love
to
it, yeah.
do that. I see that you put in the consent to have us visit. Would that be helpful to others?
Very helpful.
Okay, so can we schedule that?
Interesting, too.
Hmm.
Going back in time, parts of it.
If I just go on the website, the environmental form will be fairly obvious.
EAF should be.
EAF, okay, great.
If
My
it's not on-
battery is
If
dying.
it's not on our,
It's on the planning board, so.
under HDRB, then it'll be under either planning or the zoning board.
We'll see how long my battery lasts to look it up for you.
Okay, so then let's start with, do we want to schedule a site visit?
Yes.
Yes. That would be helpful.
Okay.
Are you here full-time or frequently, or I see that your address is in Manhattan, but.
I don't live in the house here.
Yeah, right, I didn't know if you had a
I don't
tent in
think
the
so.
yard or anything. When would all of you be available?
Well, the only time I'm available is Sundays.
On Sundays?
I'm I'm always willing as well to represent them and open up.
I think
if they
Tom
have
knows
any-
where I live.
That's right, don't you have properties next to each other?
Okay.
I am gone this Sunday in the afternoon, but I'm around in the morning, and otherwise I'm in town going forward on Sundays,
This
except the 22nd.
Sunday the 1st, what time would you be available until?
I probably need to leave town around 3.
Oh, okay. I could do it if it were on the earlier side, if it were at like 10. 10 on Sunday? This Sunday?
Yep.
Well, soccer is always the challenge.
They could
So are you
make
able to make it at 10
Oh,
on
yeah.
Sunday?
Yeah.
Okay. Soccer is life-consuming for
Mm-hmm.
multiple months.
I apologize, we're out of town.
Should be set.
Do you feel comfortable with that?
Absolutely,
Talking about
Tom
my
is
kids.
more than welcome to.
Okay, so,
Okay.
we'll look forward to seeing you again on the 11th, October 11th. And,
We're actually out of
I could-
town for October 11th, but Tom will come.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
And I could
Because-
bring
yeah.
drawings like more clearly,
yeah, I think,
truer elevations rather than perspectives, if that's.
yeah, I think that, you know, the more you can sort of firm up stuff,
Yeah.
the better. Certainly the CEQA process will take a certain amount of time to go through, so if you could bring that form, and, you know, on the 11th, we can vote and start the whole process. Yes.
May I ask a question? If it's the committee's feeling that we should modify the plans to make so it sounds like you're okay with the roof being the same height here? Or do you want it to step down
Step
everywhere?
down a bit.
Yeah.
Could make a difference.
We could, I mean, because not a thought.
Typically, the way I would have approached this is that what you're trying to do is recreate the original building. And then this is an addition, rather than the original building kind of stretched out.
Okay,
And so I would say, you set it back, drop it down a little bit so that
setback like back.
where it was originally. In other words, in the building, is there where the original wall was?
Yes.
Yeah.
All
All right.
And foundation and everything.
Right.
So we want to see what it means.
Yep.
Flood.
I think if you're looking to maintain the original oldest part of the building and make that a restoration as much as possible, I think theoretically, if you're adding to it, it should sort of be added to in a way that the original building would have been added to, and which would have been a main volume of a house, and something that's added to it is subsidiary and not as large and as important as the main volume. You simply wouldn't just stretch it out.
Okay.
Well, the addition that was added to it kept the same line.
Keeps the
Yes, I
same
know.
plane,
But
it has a
just
lower
drops the
roof
roof
line.
down.
Well, it just flattened the roof some.
It just flattened it. I don't think that was out of historical concerns, I think that was.
Well, there were,
Did a
I'm
slapdash
actually-
G.
there were no landmarks.
Well, is there a
Yeah.
step down?
There is,
It looks like
it's
a
pretty
front
decent
door.
drop.
Yeah,
Unless
step
it's-
down.
It looks like they just put a
Unless
flat
the
roof
roof
on
was
it.
flat.
Couldn't do better.
I'm actually,
Yeah,
because,
I'm talking about this step.
because the precedent for
So if
the
we had-
addition, it's an old addition, we know
Mhm.
this, right? It has its own significance. I am open to the consideration of maintaining the plane on the front if there is distinction in roof, that you've got a shorter porch. Because in this case, it's clear that when this addition was made, they were maximizing square footage. It's a small building, right? And so by not setting it back, they were able to maintain or gain some square footage here. So if the addition already were set back, I might say, yes, you have to set it back. But given that the addition actually did stretch the front of the house, I'm open to that as long as there were another differentiation. It wasn't always the case that things were set back, because clearly people, 100 years ago worried about square footage in the same way we do.
Well, no, not always, but in this particular style, it typically was.
But this is evidence on the structure itself that the primary facade was simply extended. So I'm just saying, I'm open because there is historical evidence on the structure itself. I'm open to that. Others may not feel that way.
I don't.
Okay.
So.
I could
So
be
you'd like the
honest.
roof to come down and the
Well,
building to step away? To give us
The
an
thing
idea?
is that what you're telling us is that you would like, you're primarily interested in restoring this.
Yes,
And then adding some usable living space.
correct.
And so all I'm saying is that then this really should read as its own object. In other words, that's your primary mass. That's the, of all of the various different things, that's the part that is historic, it has historic fabric.
What would you recommend we do to maximize square footage? Because what we've gone is the Scenic Hudson, when we signed a contract, gave us square footage recommendations that we followed.
Mhm.
And how would you recommend that we best maximize square footage?
Well, even just a setback, a visual setback, like a
Right.
notch, can make a difference in the lower roof line.
Or a corner board can make a
Yeah.
difference. I mean, I think that for me, it's less about that plane, because again, it's evidence on the structure for how it was handled once in time. For me, it's about the mass. Now, this isn't visible from a public right of way, so that gets sticky. It's that this becomes so dominant, and it is so much square footage. I'm interested in Sean's idea of a lower gable, but again, because it has limited visibility, I don't know how much we can actually say about that.
Well, if the old edition on the 1920 sketch had visibility, certainly this side of the addition, of the proposed addition, would have visibility also from the viewing platform.
I would be much more open if there were deference in the roof line here, because I think that makes a difference.
I get that.
That's one thing that would make a difference.
Okay. Understood. We're looking back with different drawings.
Do you feel one way or another about shutters?
On the addition, you mean?
Yes.
Because the original, we have the actual original shutters, and we know what they look like. Should we continue that, or is that a place where you make a change?
Well, here, where you have a very wide window, and you have these itty-bitty shutters that would not cover that wide
Yeah.
window,
Mhm.
we typically recommend against having shutters in such a situation.
Okay.
Because, shutters should actually completely
No,
cover
shut
the window.
that.
They should actually,
Yeah.
shutter. And so this type of shutter would not be. To the extent that there were shutters on these windows, and we know what kind they were, whether they were paneled or whether they were board-type shutters.
There's
or whether they were-
photographs of them in the
It
document.
will also give us a chance to read the document so that we can get up to speed.
And by the way, this was not Gouverneur Kemball's house. Gouverneur Kemball's house was on another lot. The old maps in Cold Spring show that this was William Kemball's house. Gouverneur Kemball's house no longer exists. It was almost identical to this house, but it was on another site, and only bits of the foundation still exist, which I'm saying.
Was it another bachelor party pad?
No, that
Well, no,
wasn't-
he was the bachelor. William actually got married.
William had a family, yeah.
Yeah, William had a family. And, if they had
That's why the
six
addition
kids sleeping in one
needed-
room, that was like perfectly normal back then.
Right. Interesting.
Great.
Okay.
We'll see you on Sunday.
Yeah, all right.
Good.
And so for the 11th, take a look at what you're proposing, and start bringing in information. If you could, we'll take a look at this and see what other historical information we would like you guys to gather.
That'd be great,
And
thank you.
we'll let
The
you
plan
know.
for the 11th will just be to take the secret vote.
Yes.
I left you guys sick, so.
Yes, there's another member who's not here this evening, so I'll make sure she gets the copy. And Al, the original application with the date stamp is here.
Okay.
It's on the top one.
That one, okay. Both there, then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What
fun.
Exciting, doesn't it?
And congratulate, are you already, in ownership, or are you in contract, or?
No, we, that June 29th.
Great.
You purchased it already?
Yes.
That's good. Good. Congratulations.
It's big news.
Yeah.
Where was Governor's house? That's quite interesting.
It was not on the property that Scenic Hudson now owns, but it's very near to it. It's a private piece of property, and it's just, it looks like just a bunch of rocks, but actually it was the foundation.
Is it on the
Chil-
Marathon site?
Yeah, it's part of the county.
And it was similarly situated with a view of the river
And
and
there's
everything, because the descriptions match.
And, yeah, the buildings are almost identical. There's also a working drawing of Governor Campbell's house. And I believe that's in either the public library or ours. I found it online, but I can't remember.
Would
where I
that be
found it.
useful to use details from?
It's probably as detailed as the Wharton drawing is in here, certainly no more so.
And there's maps, you said? There's original maps?
The Putnam History Museum has old maps.
Okay,
And-
Well,
no,
the
I've not
best,
seen
the
those.
best
You can
map
find them.
actually Karen found, the map that you found at the county, that 1850s map that you found. So you
Oh, is
can
that the
Karen
Bevan map?
Parks, she's a local
Right.
designer.
Right.
Is that the Bevan map?
I can't remember what it is.
It's not the Beers. The Beers might have it.
Not, it's older than the Beers map.
Because I think the Bevan map is like 1854 or something.
Is that it?
And it was W. Campbell on one
I
and
can't
G.
remember the name
Campbell.
either.
I mean, I'll email you.
We have
We should
a
catch
train.
train.
Catch train.
Of course.
Catch train.
As a matter of
Thank you
fact,
very
this
much.
might be,
Thank you.
this might be
Nice
the
to meet you.
drawing of the Gouverneur House.
That's what.
Because the two
Catch your
houses were
train,
new.
catch your train.
Thank you.
And they were built approximately
All right.
the same time.
Take care. See you Sunday.
I have to remember. I will.
Do you mind if I leave it like
Okay.
that? Since it's not a voting session.
Yeah, I guess the question is I guess 126 Main Street. The latest EAF, has that been passed? Well,
Yes,
first of
it's
all,
here. I just put it out for everybody. It's the
And
beginning of the
Helen,
night.
have we gotten word as far as the mayor signing the contract? Is AKR on board yet?
You communicated with Jeff on that, didn't you? I saw an email from you to Jeff saying, what is the status? And then I did not see anything back.
No, he asked me if it was the lowest bid. And I
At which we
responded.
responded, it doesn't need to be the, yeah.
Yeah, but can I ask you to follow up and find out whether or not they are on board?
Pursuing the contract.
Has the contract been signed? And they should get a copy of the latest EAF.
I was expecting something back from you. The trustees needed to approve, they enter the contract.
I'll let you know.
Okay. If you could check on that, I'd appreciate it. How about 35 Main Street, is that up on Chris?
Not yet.
Okay.
I was waiting for one document and none of this was.
Okay, so Karen dropped off the updated EAF.
Mhm.
In the file is the lead agency status.
Right.
It has been circulated. I'm not aware of any contest.
Well, from what I understand, they responded, right? The board, the planning board and the zoning board responded that
Oh,
they're
yeah,
not.
that's all been done. They all met, they voted for you to be lead agent, so
Right.
that was a while ago.
But tonight we're talking about design options, right?
Correct.
Cool.
Yes.
Let's do it.
So, and first of all, this is kind of our summary of alternatives, because that's something you've asked for a while, so that was just kind of our written explanation of our exploration of alternatives. We haven't developed plans for the alternatives because we feel that mainly for the reasons that we're seeking to demolish, those reasons stand for each of the alternatives for saving parts of the building.
Okay, so this is essentially conceptually, what are the various different options as far in lieu of demolition?
Correct, yes. And comparing to demolition.
Well, the last option is
It's-
demolition then.
Right.
So,
Okay.
it's for your viewing
Yeah.
pleasure.
Is
Cutting
it helpful
into
to
my-
talk, is it helpful to have you
Matt?
talk us through them? What's helpful to you in terms of
I think
feedback?
so. I mean, that's something that you've requested a couple of times. I
Yeah.
assume that's for you to have kind of backup documentation.
Right.
Um,
Can you send it to me electronically so I can send it to Carolyn and Andrea who are not here?
We- There are, Karen
I
brought enough
just gave
copies,
6
they're right here in the
copies.
file, they can come and grab them too.
Okay. All right, can you let them know that we have it and they should go and pick it up?
and I can also email it as well if you like.
Actually, it probably is a good idea because I would think that that would also be something that would send to AKRF.
These are 6 copies of our most current version of proposed building plans.
Do you need anything out of previous
I believe so,
stuff? Okay.
because that's, if we do, I have some presentation boards we can look at. And this is just a kind of a preliminary study of perspective views of the building.
So we're gonna, I keep this, keep the local.
What is this?
This is the new street that Karen proposed.
The new street, yes.
That's what it looks like. Corner lot.
Let's not get this on
Okay, so as you may or may not be aware, because we haven't really talked in any great length about the proposed replacement for the structure, but as you know, the existing use of the structure is a retail space on the first floor and an apartment above. So that is what we're proposing for our new structure as well. So the use on the property is not intended to change. We're proposing retail space on the first floor to accommodate Sue's business, and the second floor would be a single dwelling unit.
I just had a thought, excuse me for interrupting you. There are a couple of new hotels in Beacon. One of them is near the bank, the Tabernacle, the old bank building that's now the Tabernacle. It has, one building came down, another building went up, there's an alleyway. There's a strange connection at the roof line, but it's an interesting relationship between the two structures that are about 5 feet apart. So it's worth looking at to
This is
sort of
that
get a.
down by the Bank Square Coffee.
It's
Bar.
on
It's
the
on
river
that side,
side
yeah.
of Main Street, across from, sort of diagonally across from.
From the Outfitters.
From the beach
Yes,
bus.
yeah. Sorry, that just came to mind as you were
Yeah.
describing, go ahead.
Great.
We still can't get over that giant thing in the middle of Beacon across.
No one
from the
can.
post
I
office.
Hence the building
Massive.
moratorium. But it's just interesting to think about
Yeah,
how these
okay.
might relate. Anyway, keep going.
Okay. And so as we've discussed a bit before, our goal would be, as part of the new construction, is to pull the building away from 124 Main Street. Our current goal would be to pull it to the setback line 5 feet away from the building and then construct the new structure, working toward the back of the lot. And in response to some of the things we've talked about with your board regarding the existing structure, we'd like to reference certain building features such as the parapet facade and the bay window. So the 2-story bay window, we've actually designed to be in proportion with the existing, however, it would lengthen to work with our building plan. So we'd basically be building a new bay structure. We don't think it's actually feasible to kind of pluck that off of the side of the building and reinstall it in a new building, just because of the way new building materials will lay out, ceiling heights. We'd certainly want to replace all the windows within the bay. However, our goal is that the width of the windows in the bay would be the same as the width of the windows that currently exist, and the proportions of trim features. And we'd also like to try to salvage the existing brackets and see what sort of condition they're in, save whatever ones can be saved, and replicate additional brackets if some are beyond repair. We do think they're kind of sweet, quirky brackets, and it's one of the few remaining original features or very old features of the building.
Can you remind me of something? Is the idea of going back 5 feet that you don't own that front of the building? I mean, why are you wanting to step back off the existing street line?
Not off the street line.
I mean, off the existing structures.
Because we don't own that.
That's what I,
property.
so have you approached the village about that?
Wait, off of the existing?
Right now, the buildings are flush with each other.
Yeah, they're planned, they will be. When I say 5 feet, I was talking 5 feet
Oh.
off of the Silver Spoon building side.
Oh,
Yeah.
so when I look here, once you
That's
said
just-
that, my brain read that
No,
as set back.
that's just a
Okay.
reflection of the angle of
But-
that
In other words, it's.
But it is
alley.
moving like 9 inches
Side
or
alley.
something.
But
right?
for, just so
Like
you
six
know, our
inches off the
building
property
sits
line, 6
over
inches.
our property line right now.
It happens all over Main Street.
Yes.
But if we rebuild, we would build on our own property.
Right.
And next week, we are going to talk to the village about this area, but
So what does that effectively do to the way your facade would relate to Jimmy's building if you're shifting back?
It will be essentially aligned with it. Well, we want to be on our property. His building actually sits over
I know.
his front property line. And our intent was to set the front facade of our building 6 inches within our property line. We could go right up to it. The code allows for you to be within the average of
Right.
the buildings on either side. So, the 6 inches was kind of a protection thing, so if we need a stoop step, or a sill overhang for our entry that's gonna project out a few inches, that we're not, having the building facade right on the property line, we have a few inches to play with.
Well, and effectively, if they were to be separated, 6 inches is not going to be
Right.
legible in the same way that it would be if they were right against each other.
right, and then I do think the new building would be in line with Mr. McCaffrey's building, which we share parking lot, so we would be at the same level there.
Thank you for explaining that.
So the 5 feet, I'm sorry for not being more clear about
No,
that.
that was my brain, not yours.
5 feet was between the buildings, which are now approximately 6 inches apart or less.
And you've done, it looks, I don't know if this is just a shorthand because you're doing sketchy drawings, but the building has small dentils on its parapet now, and you've got big, heavy brackets.
Right, so for the purposes of tonight, I would ask that you not get too hung up on the details of trim and the front facade in particular, the division between. I mean, this is a concept,
Yep.
and the respective views especially are kind of studies, so we don't have all the details ironed out with how it's gonna connect to Main Street, the sidewalk. But in concept, this is the scale and the style of the building and the general window layout, the window style that we're looking for, and then we, expect to kind of fine tune the brackets and ornamentation. So, and again, the general design and concept is to give the feeling of an original building that fronted Main Street with the concept of additions that we're adding on, which is so typical of Main Street, by stepping the building back. And we also have an addition projecting out the side of the structure. So the addition projecting out the side obviously serves for the purpose of providing more floor area in terms of the layout of the space. But we also, in regards to the actual site plan, it's our goal to try to give the view from the street back into the site just a more attractive appearance, because we are going to be required to have 10 parking spaces back there. So our feeling is, with this projection off the side of the building, that will also help screen the bulk of the parking from the street view, as well as provide valuable floor space and give some relief to the length of the building as it's projecting back into the property. However, the overall length of the building as it projects back is comparable to both neighbors. It projects a little bit deeper than the two-story section of Jenny's building on the Silver Spoon, and essentially in line with McCaffrey's building. So,
Is that kitchen addition on the back, just to orient myself? Not, I mean, at
That's right
Jimmy's?
here.
Yeah.
this is a one-story addition on the back.
And how much longer overall is it compared to the existing building?
Existing, check that, but I think it was about 18 feet longer. I'll have to confirm. Just
What's the most helpful conversation to have?
Well, I think,
16 feet.
I think that we should, look at this stuff and
I'm
at
sorry,
least,
18 feet.
to me, the biggest step forward is going to be the building alternatives. I think that what I see here, if demolition is approved, it seems to be a very reasonable approach, if demolition is approved. So I think ultimately what we need to do is we need to come up with, we need to, as soon as we finish the secret process, we need to address that so that we can get down to.
I understand that. I'm asking what kind of feedback is useful right
Wait
now.
a minute, I don't understand what you're saying, because, so the secret, we're reviewing demolition and reconstruction. Our mitigation of the demolition is the reconstruction. So
That's one
then
of
we're
the
going
possibilities, right? It might be, one of the other possibilities is a portion
Well,
demolition.
the EAF though is talking about demolition and reconstruction. So we're mitigating the effects of the demolition with our reconstruction. So I'm not sure where does the conversation continue to come in about,
Total demolition is one option. Another option is partial demolition, and that's part of what we walk through with the consultant, is looking at all the options. So we don't just look at one option. That's your one option, but we have to look at all of the
okay, I'm
options.
just misunderstanding, because when I read the description of the,
But now we do the next part, right? You filled out the first part, and now we do the next piece, which is analyze that and work with our engineer and against our standards and look at all the options.
Okay, I'm just sort of confused about.
So this process is just beginning.
Right. Except for that this is talking about seeks approval to remove an existing building and replace it with a new building. So I guess I was assuming in this process, we're talking about that,
Yeah.
not talking about other options.
But our job is to look at multiple options, and among those options are complete replacement, partial replacement, and restoration. I mean, all of those things, that's all a range of possibility. We're obligated, when someone asks to demolish a building in the National District, to look at all of the mitigation options.
I understand that, but we did that previously, and I
You
just.
did that, but we haven't done that.
I
That-
just assumed we did that together.
But
Since
we
April.
haven't come to a decision on that. So we're beginning the process by you bringing in one alternative, but that's not the end of it. We don't tonight say, well, okay, we've got one option.
No, I'm just confused because this is talking about the proposed action. And I just assumed that we were, the review was of that action.
Well-
I'm just confused about
Yeah.
that.
I mean, ultimately, the process that we're going through is that you're proposing a demolition, so we have to, and that is what you're proposing in part one.
Right.
Now, part two is actually, it belongs to us.
Right.
And what we have to do in part two is take a look at all of the possibilities, and this is the first part of it, which we just got. So the issue becomes, we now, and we will forward this to the consultant who's going to take us through the process, but we have to go through the process and produce a body of documentation to say, we looked at all of the options, demolition's the only way to go. And so that'll bring us to a conclusion on the secret process, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty of the design.
Okay, I'm just confused too, because when I look at the part two, it's talking about this project, the
Right.
demolition and the reconstruction. So are you gonna be filling out several versions of part two?
No, you have to understand that, and ultimately, the consultant will tell us how we fill out part two.
Right.
But see, the part two that was prepared was, Glenn Watson
Right.
prepared a proposed part two.
Right, right.
So, but ultimately, the part two is what we sign off on.
Right.
And as part of that review, we will be looking at a variety of options, and not just what Mr. Watson recommended.
Oh, no, I understand that, but you know what I'm saying, like, so when you read this, it looks like when you review this, you're having to review it based on a project. It's not something that when, if you look through this, that it's not, okay, in choice one, this looks better, but in choice two, that looks better. When you read part two, it looks like you're identifying a project and talking about that project.
Well, ultimately, that's something that the consultant needs to guide us on how what part two is supposed to look like, so.
What part two establishes is how much the impact will be, the impact of the demolition, right? It's gonna have a small impact, excuse me, or a moderate to large impact. And then from there, you go into the steps of saying, okay, if it's a large impact, if it's a positive declaration, it's gonna be a large impact on the district. What are the possibilities for mitigating that impact? One of the possibilities may be it's completely acceptable to demolish the entire building and build something new. One of them may be we mitigate by, in our design, capturing elements of the structure. Some of it, another mitigation might be that you retain certain elements of the structure in new construction. So,
And that's our part 3, is answering your concerns.
No, I think part 3, because from what I understand, we do part 2 and 3. So I think part 3 is when you start getting into further explanatory material for the responses to part 2.
Okay, that was explained differently to us, that part 3 was our responsibility to respond to your concerns.
but I think
That's
that
why we're
you
looking at
can
some-
have broad, I think that we can give broad feedback tonight, though. I mean, if this is an option.
Well, for
Um,
us, I mean, one obvious, to us, the way to mitigate the negative impact of taking down this building is what we're recreating, so we need to be able to have good feedback about what we're gonna create and work on that, so we can say, this is what we're gonna do.
Well, the thing is that you have the secret process, which is to go through the EAF. But that doesn't really address our role as the review board for the historic district. So,
Right.
but the thing is that process does not have to stop. We can't take any final action until the EAF is complete.
Right.
But there's no reason why we can't review this stuff and give you feedback.
Well, that's
So I
our
agree.
understanding too, yeah, so, we have to be able to move forward with this so that we can use it
As
a
one of your
mitigation,
options.
Right.
Mhm.
And actually, I think it's not my choice, but if we had to preserve something, we can still talk about doing what we're doing. It's not totally out of
Right.
character, so.
I think that this building has always lived, well, not always, since the 80s, it's lived strangely on Main Street because of the way the entrance sits at the top corner here, and there's this bay. Certainly you're rationalizing entrances in a way that makes more sense for a building that sits on Main Street A and B extends back, because it in effect has 2 primary facades. Rationalizing the second entrance on this side makes much more sense than way back at the other corner. I mean, this design is just true to the spirit of the building that's there. My hesitation about it is the mass of the addition on the back, which is really striking when you sort of get into this kind of angle. How large this is back here.
I actually think that compared to the way that the building kind of tapers backward now,
Mm-hmm.
a little more senselessly, I think that this having a wider addition at the back is actually a better way of using the space.
That's true.
Because it does kind of cut that sight line off, and, the lot it's this big old lot, but it's not really functioning as anything other than just being a big old lot. So, by kind of giving by kind of having the building have its own sort of streetscape in a way on that facade, it makes it a little more interesting, and it shields the back half of the lot. I mean, if you look at the site plan, you can see how
Mhm.
much space there is back there.
It is a giant lot.
And by kind of squeezing the entry into the back, by making it a little bit more narrow, I think all of the visual whatever that's going to occur back there is reduced
Is-
from Main Street.
Is
as
this
you're
where the
walking down
parking
Main
ends up,
Street.
over here?
Right, so we
So this works to tuck
Correct.
that away too.
It kind of makes it like a gate in its own way.
That's a good point.
So we have 8 spaces nosing in along this property line, and we have 2 parallel spaces in here.
Oh, so you're not pointing headlights into the neighbor's backyard.
Well, also, we don't have the width for, needed to accommodate 10 spaces. So the other thing to consider is we have a handicap accessible space at the back of the lot here. And we're actually considering the side entrance, one of the prominent entrances. We obviously want an entrance on Main Street and think that the retail facade needs to have an entrance. But for access in and out of the building from the rear of the property, there will be access through here, but it's more of a utilitarian door. So the concept is to bring customers around the facade and in this prominent side entrance.
Well, it enlivens that side, which has been sort of lost space for a very long time.
Right, and we don't want people to have to walk all the way to Main Street to get into the building, but not go through the back utility entrance if possible.
I think the building, I think that the layout works well. And I think that, and you've got basically two approaches with historic buildings. And one is to sort of recreate something that, or recreate something that was there before, or something similar, or else you do a building which is of its own time, but it is fits within this. On this building, sort of torn between, because I think there are those who will want to see something similar, and so I think going with the latter approach may be a little bit more of a reminder of people that this building in the district was demolished. I think that I guess the only sort of broad recommendation or reaction is that it seems like the front facade is a little bit ornate. I mean, I guess just draw, with it next to Jimmy's.
Well, that building has been stripped.
Yeah.
This building was more ornate. It had huge brackets and much
yeah.
larger windows.
I like, if let's say we were recreating it, and it's all approved, I think this is a very strong direction to go in. I know and then whether or not ornamentation, to me, that's not that critical. I think that, that's a detail we can tweak once we get to that point.
I agree that it's something that can be discussed later, but I do think it's important to maintain some sort of a link as far as the decorative, if I understand that entire bay maybe can't be kept and reused as it exists, but incorporating the decorative elements from that bay, I think, is an important part of the totally new construction remaining contextual.
I agree.
But that's something that we can discuss at a later time. One other thing, and I know that you were saying that your perspectives are a little funny in the computer rendering. I'm just having a bit of trouble, piecing together the roof pitches.
Yeah.
Could you bring a rear elevation? Because it is the flat front, it's kind of hard to see how the roofs are pitching up.
Sure. Absolutely.
Because that is, as we discussed the last time, that is kind of a character defining aspect of the building, is just that connection between the front.
And actually, Jimmy's building does have cornice, which is covered up.
Well, the
Right.
brackets are, we don't know if the brackets are still there or not, because it got closed up again before anybody had a chance to look.
But at least that'll tie the brackets that you use in here with building next to it. That, and also I think that this
Well,
door is a little flat.
I think that when
Very
that's open,
weird door.
I'd like to have a conversation about that, because this building didn't have big brackets, it had dentils. It had very petite and dignified dentils.
Originally?
Here,
Oh.
you can see them.
I never knew they were called dentals, and now whenever I see them, I'm just like,
Yep.
So just a quick summary of the roof, and I will bring on rear elevation, but there is a ridge running perpendicular to Main Street behind
Mhm.
the facade. And then we have about a 4-on-12 pitch of the roof over the main building structure. You can see on the front facade, A3, basically, there's very little overhang of that roof, of the front building rectangle, and that's to keep gutters kind of close to the facade, so we don't feel like we have kind of ears projecting out beyond the parapet. And also, one of the features of the existing structure, and I think it is important to maintain if we're referencing the bay window in the new structure, is that we keep the roof of the bay window under or below that roof overhang versus increasing the height and tying it in. So, we want to avoid any sort of large roof overhang projecting over that. As we step back and the building steps back, we're continuing the roof pitch, but dropping it down. So on A4, you can kind of see we're doing the same 4-on-12 roof pitch, but dropping the plate height down in that area. And at the back of the building, we'd actually like to create overhangs for better drainage, and that's why I've started to incorporate some simple brackets back there.
Well, and it's one of the things why I was wondering, you had the brackets going all in the back part, but not on the front part. And basically, that's because you had the gutter, right?
Well, and we have no overhang on the front part. So similar to the existing structure, what we want to do is keep, this is basically gutter that you see here. So basically, we didn't want an overhang kind of projecting and creating these like triangles that extend beyond the front parapet. So we do a minimal overhang, enough to get proper ventilation in for attic roof venting, but that might be 1 or 2 inches, and then a fascia board, and we would want to have a gutter on that facade. So, like in A3, you can kind of see where the overhang is minimal and you have the gutter projection. So we
It would be
really
so
don't.
strange if you were to go larger than that.
Right.
It would look like ears.
Yeah. And also, we want to pull, the height of that is actually kind of driven by the roof of the bay window structure, because again, we want to get that roof structure above the bay window versus tying the bay into that roof structure. But at the back of the building, I mean, I personally think overhangs are very important for maintenance and longevity of materials, and also I think to give the back of the building a little bit more character. It's stepping in and down. So
Well,
we have-
the thing is that, I would assume, are you saying that you're not gonna have any gutters in the back? That the overhang will just first
No.
create a drip line?
No, we would have gutters on the back. so-
Well, I think that the one thing which you may want to think about is perhaps increasing the height of the fascia board. Because the other thing that you should think about is that, in addition to putting insulation in the attic, you can also build up the depth of the roof members by putting in rigid insulation on top of the sheathing boards. That'll give you a little extra depth, and then you can have the gutter and still have places to put the brackets on the bottom. I'm of mixed opinion as far as, because I think that what you're doing is you're differentiating the front part, and then the back part clearly looks like an addition, and the fact that the brackets are on the back part sort of signals that it's a different type of construction. So
Yes, that's
Spitballing
the
ideas.
idea.
Well, it also,
Spitballing ideas.
you have achieved that organic add-on look that was real.
Any other reactions, comments?
No, I think it's positive, and I think too, you know, if it's only a partial demolition and reconstruction, something in this general sort of shape and footprint, I think it's also something that could be achieved using the original volume of the building too. So, obviously you have to make, you know, considerations based on what is usable and how it can be moved and everything else. But I think, you know, were you to be coming to us with a plan to take off the additions in the back and take the original building and move it 5 feet and build this off to the back, I think it would still be a really credible way of dealing with the building. So, but, you know, it's easier said than done.
Okay,
Great.
Thank you.
thank you.
So Al, you are following up with the mayor to find out the status of the trustees and the contract?
I'll call, yes, I'll give Jeff a
We
call,
should leave
but
a
I was,
set for Andrea of the new drawing. We should use a set for Andrea and Carolyn as well, so they can pick up the week.
I was under the impression that Carolyn was gonna take care of it. She was gonna be the liaison with.
To the consultant, but who's following up with the trustees?
Well, I have, since nobody else seemed to. So, I mean, I emailed you yesterday and CC'd Jeff, and I followed up with Jeff because our intention is to speak with the village board just to discuss about the logistics of, to connect between our lot and the sidewalk, and asked if they were actually discussing it at their meeting last night, and he didn't know. They were.
Well, when I spoke with Jeff, what he said, it was according to the policy, that this was not, you know, because of the amounts involved, this was not something which the whole board of trustees needs to vote on. He just needs to get Dave Moran to sign the contract. And so he was supposed to do that today. I haven't had a chance to speak with him.
I don't know. I have been not wanting to have too many cooks in the kitchen, so I've been leaving you and Carolyn to deal with that.
Yeah, and I thought Carolyn was taking care of it. Okay.
But can you
I will
urge,
check
can
on
you
that.
urge them to, I feel like this is taking forever.
Yeah.
Urge
Well,
them to.
it should be, you know, now that we have all of the information that we need, we should, the mayor should sign it, because then we need to move on.
Right. As soon as we start, we'll get started, right?
So, I will in fact follow up with Jeff on this too. Right?
Thanks a lot.
And then in terms of a meeting with the consultant, that we'll try and, once they're retained, we could potentially schedule that.
Yeah, basically, what, if Carolyn can't follow up on it, I will. The consultant just needs to, I would think all they need to do is review the materials. And they have a structural engineer, Robert Silman Associates, who will review the structural portion of it. And I think that they may want to come for a site visit before we we had this meeting, but as soon as I'll try and find out from them, you know, what they see as the timeline. And it's sort of, you know, the same thing. Until they're ready to sit down with us, we can't really move on that, but we can continue these conversations concerning the various options, as long as you understand that there is no final decision until we make a final
No, we
decision.
Everybody's
understand.
made that
Perfect.
very clear.
Patently
So-
clear.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Great,
This
so
is
until
one
we
of
see
your
the
time.
11th then potentially.
Yes.
And if for some reason I'm not available, I'll let you know, but if we could be on the agenda, just to keep it going, that would be great.
126 Main.
Oh,
There you are.
yes, of course.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
The vice chair didn't do that?
No.